Well, it's awesome being on the Microsoft campus on a sunny Seattle day. They don't happen often, especially as we get into the fall. But I'm excited to be here and talking about data. It's been an interesting journey right now when we think about AI and the opportunities that people are thinking about when it comes to data. They either are under prioritizing it or maybe over prioritizing it. And I'm here with two individuals that are on the Microsoft product team, Charles and Melinda. Yeah. So if you guys want to give a quick intro of yourselves, it'd be great.
Thanks, Seth. I work on the data warehousing capabilities in Microsoft Fabric.
I'm a product manager on Dataverse, which is the data store behind Dynamics, Power Apps, and everything Power.
So it's interesting right now as people are thinking about what can they do with data. And it's been an interesting journey there because when I talk to clients, their business they don't get excited about data, which is a little bit weird, right? They're like, okay, we have this data, we've captured this data, but so what? And I think that's what's been interesting with what you all have been doing and the goals that you have when it comes to data.
If you look at traditional business apps, essentially customers use these business apps to run their businesses, but they have to do a whole bunch of work to get insights out of it. So essentially what we've done is, in partnership with Fabric and Charles, we've eliminated that need to copy, move data across so you can get immediate value from your data.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting is coming from the CRM background, so the Dynamics background that I had, you would do a project, and that's what the C-suite wanted, right? They didn't want a new system. They didn't want a new CRM system. What they wanted was reports. They wanted increased sales. And to your point, we'd be on projects, and what would happen is the project would fail, quote unquote, not because the processes were wrong, but they couldn't get the data out of the system that they wanted. And so that's an interesting sort of example there.
Even if you could, in the old world, get the answers you needed out, it might have taken months. And so you had a business question. You can't afford to have the analysis paralysis of, it's going to take us 6 months to answer that question.
Yeah.
And so now you can answer it in minutes. And so that kind of agility that gives you in terms of like making decisions with data instead of hope is massive. Yeah. And I think that's the most exciting thing about this capability. Imagine that I need to make decisions and I am up against time. Right? I need to make sure that I get my products to the right sellers at this particular period of time. Yeah. It's the holiday season, and I don't know what the right products are. And I don't know how customers might receive that stuff. And if I was a leader in an organization, that would scare me. And I think in today's world, the agility is everything.
And so when you think about your supply chain, the impact of your supply chain, what does that mean, especially as you're getting ready for the holidays? And so how are you making sure that because you've been impacted during your supply chain, what are you doing and how do you know what to do and what to send where, especially if you're going to have supply shortages? Where can you get that SKU rationalization as a part of it? And so there's a lot of data that's not just internal but external that you're going to want to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting that you brought up the ports, but you must understand that the supply chain is quite big. I mean, it spans from a customer who wants to go to a store all the way to a manufacturer who needs to decide, what do I make in the coming weeks? So, if you think of a supply chain, it's all driven by data. And I think the more easier it gets to work with data, you can now look at a supply chain that ticks much faster, which in return, becomes like a benefit to the consumer because the costs are going to go down because efficiencies are going to rise, right? So, I think we're talking about great stuff here. Yeah. Well, lots of value to everyone in the supply chain, and that's kind of what makes us wake up every day.
Excited.
That's awesome, yeah, because I love the other thing I've seen in Dynamics coming out of Dataverse is being able to listen for news, right? External events, right? You talk about the supply chain. The port's just sort of almost the last 100 miles, if you will. If there's the last mile is to the door, the port's almost there, but it's not quite there. And so before that, though, as you noted, you have to go all the way back to, again, food and beverage. There's one of the things that came out in FNSC was that concept of if there's a flooding or something like that, or the hurricane that came through, there's a lot of impact also to those news and your suppliers and your manufacturers. And so the products that are on the ships that are about to be landed, those got manufactured 6 months ago. And so how did they know what to manufacture? Was it ready to go? And so that communication between partners is also important as well, which is pretty neat. So Melinda, it's interesting. You work on the Dataverse team, and we have Charles here from the Fabric team. What are you all doing to make that easy for customers right now?
Yeah, a little personal story. Before I joined Microsoft, 15 years ago, I used to make a great career out of building data warehouses. But one of the things that I realized is these data warehouses, it takes a long time to build them. It'll take, tens, it used to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what inspired me to join Microsoft is the fact that we had this vision where we needed to bring the skills of doing that down. And, if you think about what we do inside, like first thing is, if you use Dynamics, your data is in Dataverse, and it's super easy for you to build extension to your apps using Power Apps.
Yep.
You can create automations using Power Automate. Now, what we've done is to make that data securely visible in Microsoft Fabric, which is also a low-code environment where you can build these very, very compelling apps. And your story doesn't end there, because Fabric is great for collecting data from all over these channels, but we make it also possible for you to take it back into Dynamics and start building apps driving action out of that data.
Yeah.
So it's this whole life cycle of data. I mean, it's very inspiring. We've sort of brought it down to so that the low-code users can do most of this stuff. Exactly.
Yeah, we saw Charles at the conference, at Power Platform Conference, and what he described was discipline at the core and flexibility on the edge. And I think that it feels like that's what you're describing.
Yes.
So, Charles, can you get into that a little more, that concept of, hey, we have discipline at the core and flexibility at the edge, and just sort of how Fabric is accomplishing that?
We are on a journey to just change the way that people work with data. And like Melinda mentioned, it used to be when you worked and talked about data, it was a bad thing, it was scary. And when you think about how businesses need to run, they need to be able to make decisions based off data and insights and not hope.
Yeah.
And hope is always a good thing, but you need fuel behind that. And what we're trying to do is make it so that any person of any skill level can use Microsoft Fabric to make better business decisions. So when it comes to Dataverse, imagine you're creating your own apps to answer business questions. You're using the capabilities inside of the ERP, right, the CRM. You're thinking about finance, operations, customers. But now you need to make decisions on, how are we going to grow our customers? How are we going to reduce our costs? And when it comes to seeing that data, and then these external signals of what customers are doing, what your competitors are doing, and everything else, getting that complete 360-degree view of that customer and those decisions in everyone's hands within the organization is what we're after. And so no code, pro code, external modalities, any connector, any kind of system out there is what we're really after. And from a data warehousing standpoint, like what Melinda and team have been able to deliver is a data warehouse that's spun up in seconds, and then your data is constantly flowing and it writes back. And that's a fundamental thing that years ago would have taken, months and hundreds of thousands of dollars to build. And now that equation is completely flipped around. Now it's more about what insights do you need and how are you thinking about how you will use those insights to drive action from a business standpoint.
So what are some examples of how people are utilizing things like Fabric and Dataverse together, or again, to drive that action that you've talked about?
We have enterprises to small nonprofits. I'll take an example of a small nonprofit, because enterprises, I guess we know they can do it. There's this very small enterprise. It's called Degrees of Change. It's based out of Tacoma. Essentially what they do is they're a volunteer organization that helps underprivileged students to get college education. So as you can imagine, they collect lots of applications, they analyze these applications, they help these kids prep for school, college. And you wonder, when you look at the amount of information that they collect, that's very sensitive, that needs to be kept very sensitive, but at the same time, you need to be able to analyze trends, help them, So what they do is they use Power Apps, they use Dataverse, and then they use Fabric and Power BI to get those insights.
There you go.
And once you have those insights, they also want to be able to give guidance in terms of, hey, maybe this is a better career path for you.
Sure.
And being able to do that securely while respecting the data sensitivity with a team of 2-3 people, it's just mind blowing.
That's
right.
Yeah, that's just crazy empowerment. And I think that's what the Power Platform and Fabric is all about. An example that I really like is when you think about a dealership. When you first come into the dealership and you buy that first car, thinking about how you can serve the best experience when you buy that car, and then when you drive home, right? And then as you're, working with your family, going to work every day, your car may have service that it needs.
Yeah.
And then allowing the service team at that dealership to build a better, deeper relationship with you, take care of you. You know, your kid grows up, and now as your kid needs a new car, that same experience, that same dealership understands, hey, you know, little Timmy is now ready for their first new car.
Yeah.
And then continuing to just service those customers over and over again is something that's enabled by understanding your customer very deeply. And this integration to me is all about understanding the things that you care about as a business more effectively, and then being able to act on it.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many different integrations between our products that really enable you to act on new things that they might do. That's really powerful.
So one of the things you mentioned there is you have data, and data is only so good. But if you don't leverage it or utilize it to improve your decisions, then it doesn't do much. But now we're in this age of sort of autonomous AI agents and stuff like that. And Melinda, you were sharing something sort of that your team is working on and working towards around utilizing stuff in data to help agents.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Think of a typical office. When you walk into the back office, you will see people using two screens. Well, more than two, but let's say two. Typically on the left-hand side, they'll have their business application. On the right-hand side, they'll have a Power BI dashboard. So typically you'd look at your dashboard, you know, try to figure out, hey, what's going on here, and then try to internalize, oh, this is what's going on. I know what to do. Turn around and do something in the business app. I mean, what we've done with agents or co-pilots is to pretty much get co-pilots to help you in this cycle of things. So as you can imagine, there's co-pilots within the applications that help you do things much easier. There's co-pilots in Fabric that'll make it so much easier. But now we are talking about co-pilots with whom you can start a conversation, ask questions, but also get certain stuff done. Like you don't have to go open a bunch of screens, approve a purchase order, or assign someone else. You can just do it in a single conversation.
That's interesting. Going back to your service example of dealerships and stuff like that, it's interesting because my car will notify me, hey, you need to get an oil changed in 10 days or whatever that is. And so being able to, you know, have that communicate back with the dealership and being able to improve my experience there, right? So making sure there's a loaner car there type of thing, making sure that the parts are in there, maybe having extra wiper blades and stuff like that they, you know, want to enhance my experience. But when I come in there, the car is taken care of and it's full service. And so being able to take action, right? It's having those parts, making sure, hey, are we low on stock is a part of that, and having it be productive as well is very intriguing.
Absolutely. And what we're also super excited about is that we've made it easy for you to build this with low code.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you're one of these Fortune 100 companies, you could have done it because you have tons of resources to deploy. Whereas if you're a small business or a middle, you know, like a dealership, these things were beyond your reach.
Yeah.
But with low-code copilots, essentially what we've done is the same kind of stuff that Fortune 50 companies are doing. We've made it possible for you to do it yourself.
Sure.
So that's where the low-code agents are super exciting and also reachable.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think there's a generational change that has grown up with the internet, that has grown up building computers and working on computers. And so a lot of the people in your programs, in your teams, have this capability that is available, and it's just a matter of empowering them to do it, right? And that, again, goes back to the security concept, discipline at the core, and then flexibility on the edge to be able to empower people to do what they need to as a part of it. And that goes back to Microsoft's mission of empowering every individual and every organization to achieve more. And that's been neat to see that lived out through y'all's teams.
The flexibility at the edge is all about time. Because when you're a business person, you have so many different things going on. Being able to make decisions that matter is really, really, really valuable. Yeah. If you think about your leader of your organization, they're making core decisions that are one-way doors. And there's not a lot of, there's a ton of risk to these one-way doors, right? But other folks have 2 or 3-way doors. They need data to make the right decision there. And not having that analysis is the difference between, hey, when Seth comes in, we know exactly what Seth's preferences are. There's a potential opportunity to upsell Seth. Or Seth comes in and we didn't know he was coming in. The service team is late, the sales team's late, and Seth leaves. And from a small, medium, or large business perspective, those interactions at scale matter a ton. Yeah. And you have the agility now with that flexibility at the edge to when you determine there are those opportunities to really make sure they count. And that is a tremendous opportunity. So if you have the discipline from a ERP, CRM, business apps, data-driven perspective, you get that flexibility at the edge. And these tools enable that more than anything else.
So as we wrap up, what are you excited about that's coming, again, without breaking any NDAs, but in the space and what you're seeing clients do and what's ahead for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of alluded to it in our discussion.
Yeah.
Being able to create an agent who can take some of the chores or the burdens away from you is amazing. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, if you had to wait for pro devs and months of developments to do that kind of agents, well, guess what? I mean, it's kind of not going to happen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What we're super excited is with Microsoft Copilot Studio, how building these low-code agents now becomes something that you can do as a power user. I mean, that's amazing. That's just groundbreaking. Yeah. So.
Really excited about the work that your team's doing just to empower everyone. We use all this technology internally, which is super exciting. And what I found is it's a transformational opportunity if you can see the future coming. And what I see is, in our business and in many of our customers' businesses, you never have enough workers. And right now, the AI conversation is all about jobs, rightfully so. But as it shifts and evolves to workers, what I see is you have an opportunity to empower every one of your workers that's human, and then you get an additional, AI worker that can go even a step further. And together, 1 + 1 is always 2. And so you start thinking about that as a skill factor, and it's a tremendous opportunity for every single business. And I always think about customers, but that customer experience just got a lot better with AI.
No, that's neat. I'm excited about both of those. Everybody only has 24 hours in the day, but what you've described is a future where, as an individual, I can achieve more asynchronously, and that opportunity, because it's empowered by data, because it's empowered by these agents, to achieve.
I mean, I can give an example from one of our customers who's already trying some of that stuff. They take pride in the personal, the experiences they provide. And, they're very well known in the industry for doing so. But what they're finding is that their customer base is expanding, and their people are spending way more time doing paperwork and chores and things like that, which is kind of taking them away from what they love to do. Yeah. So hopefully, we're working with them on building agents that does that for them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's super exciting.
Yeah. It's interesting. Nobody joins a company to push papers, right? That's not why you join Microsoft. It's not why I joined RSM. There was opportunities, and what part of their vision is connecting with clients and empowering the people to do what they want to do and empowering customers. And so what you described is, we've gotten into this place where we do need the data, but how are we capturing the data without it getting in the way as a part of it? But we need that to tailor experiences.
Workers and customers, at the very human element, we can add a lot more value and help a lot more people when we have help. And so I think a lot about this AI from that perspective. And I think, wow, there's opportunities for people who maybe bog down with tasks that aren't as fun to have a lot more fun, but also get that next promotion or have that family or spend more time with their loved ones. And I think as humans, we really focus and really love purpose. Yeah. And I think about AI as an opportunity for us to really unlock our deeper, further purpose, and that's exciting.
Well, on that, I don't know how we go beyond that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about purpose as individuals, and so I'm excited for what's ahead. I appreciate the time this afternoon to connect on this sunny Seattle day.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been great fun chatting, and then we should do this more often.
Sounds good with me.